There is a sentence that some people hear so often that eventually they start believing it. Why do you take everything so seriously? Why are you so emotional? Why do you think about everything so much? Just let it go. And perhaps the sentence that hurts the most: you're too sensitive. Maybe you heard it from your parents, maybe from a partner, a friend, a teacher, or maybe you've been telling it to yourself for years. So you learn to hide your reactions. You stopped saying when something hurt. You laughed when you actually wanted to cry. You pretended not to care. You became quieter. You became tougher. And slowly, you started treating one of the deepest parts of your personality like it was a problem that needed to be fixed. But what if we've been looking at it from the wrong angle? What if sensitivity isn't simply about feeling more? What if it's about noticing more? Think about the last time you walked into a room and immediately knew something was wrong. Nobody had said anything. Nobody had argued. Everyone was smiling. But you could feel that something had changed. Maybe someone's voice was slightly different. Maybe their smile didn't reach their eyes. Maybe they answered a little too quickly. Most people would simply continue the conversation. You noticed. And then you probably did what you always do. You started thinking about it. What happened? Did I say something? Is everything okay? And before you knew it, a 10-second interaction had occupied your mind for the next 3 hours. That can be exhausting. But here's the part most people don't tell you. Psychologists have studied something called sensory processing sensitivity. It describes individual differences in how deeply people respond to information from their environment. People higher in this trait can be more affected by sensory input, emotional cues, and subtle changes around them. And here's where it gets interesting. This sensitivity isn't simply a weakness. In certain environments, the same people can respond more strongly to positive experiences too. In other words, the same system that makes the bad things hit harder can make the good things reach deeper. A piece of music can stay with you for hours. A beautiful sunset can stop you in the middle of a busy day. A kind word from someone can mean far more than they probably realize. And sometimes you notice things other people simply don't notice. But there is a price. Because when your mind keeps registering more information, you can reach your limit faster. A crowded room can become exhausting. Constant noise can become unbearable. Too many conversations can leave you wanting to disappear for a while. And after a long day, you may not want entertainment. You may not want company. You may just want silence. That doesn't automatically mean you're antisocial. It doesn't mean you're weak. And it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. Sometimes your mind is simply asking for less information. And there's another interesting part. People who are highly sensitive aren't necessarily sensitive in only one direction. Research on environmental sensitivity suggests that some people are more responsive to both negative and positive environments. Put the same person in a hostile environment and they may struggle more. Put them in a supportive environment and they may benefit more. It's a little like a plant. Some plants can survive almost anywhere. Give them poor soil, little water, too much heat, they'll still find a way to survive. Other plants are more demanding. The wrong conditions can damage them quickly. But give them the right environment, the right light, the right care, and something remarkable happens. They don't merely survive, they flourish. That's why one of the most interesting ideas in psychology is called vantage sensitivity. The idea that some people may benefit more strongly from positive environments and experiences. So maybe the question isn't, how do I become less sensitive? Maybe the better question is, what kind of environment allows me to function at my best? Think about that. Maybe you've spent years trying to become tougher when what you actually needed was better boundaries. Maybe you kept forcing yourself to stay in rooms that constantly exhausted you. Maybe you surrounded yourself with people who made you question your own reactions. Maybe you thought you needed thicker skin when you actually needed distance. And this is where sensitivity becomes complicated. Because being sensitive doesn't mean that every feeling you have is correct. It doesn't mean every intuition is accurate. It doesn't mean every negative thought deserves to be believed. Sensitivity is not the same thing as truth. You can notice something and still misunderstand it. You can feel something deeply and still be wrong about why you feel it. That's important because the goal isn't to worship your sensitivity and it isn't to destroy it either. The goal is to understand it, to learn when your mind is giving you useful information and when it is simply overwhelmed, to learn the difference between intuition and fear, between empathy and absorbing everyone else's emotions, between reflection and overthinking. Because once you understand that difference, something changes. You stop fighting yourself, you start managing yourself. And maybe that's what growing up actually is. Not becoming a completely different person, but finally learning how your own mind works. So the next time someone tells you you're too sensitive, don't immediately believe them. And don't immediately prove them wrong either. Ask yourself, sensitive to what and in what environment? Because the person who feels overwhelmed in a chaotic room might be incredibly calm in a quiet one. The person who struggles with shallow conversations might thrive in deep relationships. The person who notices every little change might become exceptional at understanding people. And the person who feels everything deeply might eventually create things that make other people feel deeply too. Your sensitivity may create problems, but it may also reveal things. The question is not whether you can turn it off. The question is whether you can learn how to use it. Because perhaps you were never supposed to become less sensitive. Perhaps you were supposed to become more aware of what your sensitivity was trying to tell you. And maybe that's the real difference between being controlled by your emotions and understanding them. You don't need to become someone else. You need to understand the person you already are. That is where the inner frame changes.